So welcome to the Node.js Node API team meeting for October 21st, 2022. We'll follow our standard approach of going through the issues tagged with milestone 11. Does anybody have any announcements they'd like to make before we get started on that? Not? Okay, I will share the screen with that and we can get started. So the first one is drive towards full coverage. I don't know, Jack, if you have any updates or comments and things we should discuss on that front.
Yep. So I opened 2 new PRs in the Node add-on API repo, and it'd be great if someone can take a look at it. One of them is just like it was one of the PRs that's already got accepted into type thread state functions, but I'm just doing it for the one without the typing.
So yeah, this one right here.
Yeah, that's just
okay.
It's like a mirror PR for like the threads, just thread state functions.
Okay, so it's basically the same changes, just makes lots of sense. Okay.
Yeah. And the other one, I think it's I think Kevin brought up some changes, and I made some edits.
Okay, so basically you've taken a look, and maybe if Kevin joins a bit later, we can just remind him that it's now ready for another look.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. This one. Okay, so I see Legend Cast. Just since we're here, you've taken made a few questions, right?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, if Kevin's here, I can discuss with him so that the primary is about the undocumented behaviors of this signal method. I found out that we didn't have documentation on the signal method in the Node add-on API repository.
Okay.
So yeah, I was trying to like say, even though we are not documenting this method, the intention of this API is to mimicking the nonce async progress workers signal behavior. So I believe it will be best to achieve a similar behavior with the nonce one. So yeah, that's the
and we should maybe even document that.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, when we hopefully if Kevin sounds like he'll be here for when we get back to looking at issues there, so we can remember to cover that in that parts.
Yeah, that would be great.
Sounds good. Okay, so okay, well thanks Jack for continuing to push that forward and adding some coverage. That's great. Better coverage of Node API on YouTube. I know we discussed a little bit last time, and Nick's taking a look. I don't know if there's anything more to discuss about that this week. If not, I think we can move on. So a list of non-C language bindings. This one I do know that, okay, I see some comments. Again, I think, Nick's working on those. We've discussed it. I don't know that there's anything to discuss this week. Tracking issues for modules that have been ported. Okay, nothing new since last time. Sorry, go ahead.
I believe Kevin is here.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I will promote him because yes, where are people? Participants. There we go. Kevin, okay. There we go. Okay, thanks. Right. So enable debug testing. Haven't done anything on that, but still list, and that takes us to the stale issue review. So let's take a look there. So I see, Kevin, you added this one, which is Electron API, right? Okay, so that's a good one to have some discussion on.
Yeah, we found this one, I think the week, not last week, but the week before. It's something that was posted in the ABI stable node repo, which wasn't one that we particularly look into that often, but Vladimir found this one and wanted us to not forget about it. I wasn't here last week, so I don't know any progress that has been made on this.
Yeah, last time we had some discussion about it. And I think we made a comment. Did we? We had, right. So we made some good discussion, had some discussion. The only thing we had in mind at that point was like maybe a define that could be used to not use NAPI create external buffer. So maintainers could sort of opt into, I only want to use methods that will be supported on everything, or I don't know what it would be called, but like with pointer cage or something like that. That was the one idea we discussed. There has been some more interesting discussion in the Electron issue itself. I think like Sharp, one of the maintainer there was mentioning they'd like to be able to check for it and do something differently potentially, right? So, you know, maybe having an API call that they could call to check. The other thing I had in mind is maybe there's a way for that method to just return a specific error code if it's not supported or something like that. Like, because currently it calls it, it crashes. That's pretty hard to work around, right? Whereas if it actually is returned and not supported, then maybe modules could do something. So it's kind of, I think it'd be good for us to still brainstorm and think about like, what can we do to help the situation, and what, into you know, how maintainers can cope with it.
Is
Yeah.
there a different method that should be used for creating these external buffers?
When the pointer cages are enabled, you have to copy the external buffers into the buffers allocated inside the engine. So if there is a API to determine if the external buffer is supported, then people can, like say, they can write code both support external buffers and the engine's internal one. Whilst the buffers that have to copy it into the managed memories, there comes the performance cost. So the behavior should be similar, I have to say, but there comes the performance cost. So they have to be and the API shape is varying, and this have to be explicitly opt-in.
Yeah, the other interesting comment like here that was posted in the discussion is actually, it sounds like you could still malloc memory using these malloc and V8 cage, and have it work. So it's not like totally impossible, but like you can't just take any pointer as part of the challenge. But even if you can malloc memory in the right place, getting that in, you know, in the discussion from here is like getting that into your add-on or dependencies, especially like dependencies of your add-on, is not necessarily straightforward or even possible, right?
Yeah, the malloc in Gates cage, it just, I believe it's just similar to the current allocating buffers with the existing API, and you can get the underlying buffer from that specific array buffer and use that memory as the malloc buffer, malloc memory, you know.
I mean, because like with this, we could probably like create a NAPI allocate, you know, allocates buffer safe for external or something, right? And free buffer. But I'm not sure that that would really, and then, you know, the default implementation is just like any alloc works, right? But I'm not sure that that's a good idea.
I mean, this can be achieved with existing APIs, existing node APIs, since we can already allocate array buffers with existing APIs even.
Yeah, that's true. If you're going to allocate your own buffer, you could basically create the buffer, grab the memory from it, and then yeah, why bother creating external? Good.
I believe the hard problem here for the library authors is that if the library is managing their own memory, and when you have to then you have to use the library managed memory. So you can't allocate the memory yourself. And
Right.
yeah, I believe that's the hardest problem for
Yeah.
library authors to adopt this change. They either have to copy the memory and they can't. And if they are using the memory as a bridge between the JavaScript land and the third party, the vendor library, then that will not work, since that library cannot access if the memory is managing their own. If the library is managing their own memory, and since they can't use the JavaScript land memory direct. But I would like to see if there is any library authors inquire about this use case, then we can decide what we can do.
Right.
If they
Right.
are
Well, in this
requesting.
issue, Lavelle is like a maintainer of Sharp and is talking about that specific issue as well. I wonder, so like, I think, yeah, like your point is very good about like, well, you can already, there's no point us adding like a malloc safe for that because you can already do that. So the problem really is yeah, we can't do anything to help on that front. The thing we might be able to do is figure out what it makes sense so that they can get an error versus like they can figure it out up front rather than having to and do something about it. Like, okay, yeah, I know the code is, I'm running in an environment where this isn't going to be supported. So I'm going to run some different slower code. And when it isn't supported, I'm going to, do the fast thing, right?
Yeah, right. The best course for us is not to crash the process.
Right. So I'm just wondering, like, if we look at the error codes. So let's see if we go to.
But I think who's crashing? I think it's not node.js crashing right now. It's probably Electron implementation of this function right now crashing.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the V8 code probably.
Yeah, it's a V8 assertion.
Oh, I see. So
But,
we can change it and return error code instead. This is probably under.
No, we have to return error code early when creating external buffers when the memory cache is enabled.
right. So that's like if we look in node built in, where are we? Node.
Yeah, but can we have like return special error code? Like, can we introduce new error code, which has like no external buffers?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, that's where I'm looking for the file which file do we have those error nodes?
Oh, it's in types, JS native
right.
API types.
Right, okay, there we go. Where are
It's okay, over here.
Oh, right here,
Yeah,
right, yeah, so, it could be like a external buffer not supported, right?
Yeah.
And basically I could see that like, if we can somehow check the V8 pointer cage definition, if you happen to compile that way, then in the implementation, it would just check that right up front and say, nope, you call external, I'm just going to return that error. Sort of that approach, which I think is the least invasive for us. The other one was like, you could have like a call that says check if this is supported or not, right?
But if we can make this error to be relatively cheap, it will be effectively, we don't need to add additional APIs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the simplest, as long as that works for them. Maybe we should ask that in this issue right here, right? I could say we discuss.
I'm still a little confused. Sorry about that. So how can I word my question here? So my understanding is that when you're using this like caging mechanism, you have to allocate your buffers differently. Are we going to provide module developers a way to create these buffers with a different allocation mechanism? Or like I'm a little confused as to how this whole thing should work. Like I kind of understand this, like returning an error if V8 caging is used, but if the developer receives that error, then they have to go through a different path to create an external buffer. So how do they go about this different path?
Currently we have two methods to create an array buffer. One is an API create array buffer, which allocates the memory by V8, which will be located inside the pointer cage. And the second is the node API create external array buffer. While this method creates a array buffer with its underlying memory pointing to the memory blocks you provided when you create the external array buffer. So when the pointer cage is enabled, you cannot create external array buffer, but you can still create the normal one, which is allocated by V8. So that's how we can avoid crashing here. So you tell the add-ons at the runtime that external array buffer is not supported, and the add-on can circumvent by another code path to create a, like say, internal array buffer and copy the external memory data into the internal array buffer. So that's the best course for us.
Is it possible for the developer to use the create external buffer, pointing to it a buffer that is created the correct way?
I'm not sure about it, because in some versions of V8, it will complain about creating array buffers with identical memory address, but in the latest version, this might be changed. So I'm not sure about if this is possible.
I see. Okay, because I think there was in that issue they were talking about this malloc in V8 cage and free from V8 cage. So would somebody be able just to allocate memory using those methods and then create the external buffer on the memory that was created from malloc in V8 cage, if that makes sense?
Basically the malloc is identical to the allocating a new array buffer inside of the it's the meaning is basically identical, since you are allocating a new memory blocks.
I see.
Yeah. So when we can already creating array buffers with V8's allocation, then it's unnecessary to, like say, recreating an external buffer,
Gotcha. Because if you were to do the create external and using the malloc in V8 cage, that's basically the same as creating an internal one, correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. It all clicks now.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing as you, Kevin, but in the end, like Legendcast's point is really good that you can effectively do it with the existing calls. There's no point if you can control the allocation then and give the pointer back to other stuff, then yeah, you could already do it with the existing code.
Gotcha.
That would
Perfect.
definitely be worth in any documentation that's added to, include that description and explanation in the documentation.
I believe we can do it by when we adding the new no external buffer allowed code.
Yeah.
We can add a section about how add-ons can handle this error code and what they can do to circumvent this code.
Yeah.
Mhm. Do we
Yeah,
have a
Go ahead.
Do we have a way to check at compile time? Like, is there a way to perform number 2?
I'm guessing that there should be a define that we can check, because like there's probably a define which has been set for V8.
Do you mean for add-ons or for Node.js core? I
For
believe
Node
for
core.
add-ons there is no means to determine this at compile time.
No, I meant in Node itself, like as we compile the nappy create external buffer, we can say if defined V8 pointer cage, put the just basically, add this code and that code just says return this error.
I see.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah, okay.
And so the way it's maybe not ideal, but like add-ons basically say, well, okay, I'm going to call this method. And if I get this error, I know. And so like, if you really want to do it out of line, you could just try and create like a 1 byte external buffer. And if it works, you're good. And if it doesn't work, that you've got, so you could still do an upfront check without changing your existing code, I think.
Yeah, exactly. You can create a very small array buffer or create a 0 length array
Yeah.
buffer.
Can I clarify one more point, just for my understanding? I didn't realize that we do have actually 2 different functions to create external buffers.
Yes, okay. And that should be so we don't forget that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and that one is actually array buffer, right? Like it's inside of JS native API .h.
Right, okay. And let me find that.
Yeah,
one.
exactly.
Just a little bit up. JS native API. Okay.
This one? Oh no, you're right. Yeah, I got the wrong.
Yeah. Yes.
one.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's right. Oh,
This one.
Yes.
Yeah, this one.
So create external. That's something different, right? But this.
Yeah,
this
this external array buffer.
Yeah. Is that what I've written up there make sense to everybody? Any other good questions like that last one?
And what you just discussed, like, do we decide that we don't add any kind of macro for people for Node API module developers to detect it? Yeah, we definitely.
I don't think we like this. This would be all we would add. Like, and if you want to detect it, you can make a call to this and have it fail on you, right? Or
okay. Just last time we were talking about adding this macro. So should we say somewhere like we decide not to do it? It's like just
right. The other define like, well, yeah, no, that's still a good point. Like, I think hey, I don't want to use methods which would run into this problem, right? So basically, if you define the define, then these 2 methods are no longer, you can't compile against them.
right.
That still could make sense. I mean, what do people think? That still kind of makes sense to offer that. It doesn't really cost us very much. And I could see some people wanting to use that versus having to cope with the 2 cases, right?
Yeah, from our perspective, we just inside of header file, we just need to check some definitions. So just say if def or if and def, if def, right? If somebody defines with something during compilation of their module, so something they can put inside of the zip file. In this case, people will simply never see it. So we can.
Right, okay, so I'll put it in and people can tell me to take it out afterwards. Add a define. Maybe, and we did have that in here, right? Was it? Okay,
Yeah, we didn't specify a name before. We just had the idea that.
no. I don't know, we'd have to see if that fits.
Yeah, you misspelled maybe.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Define that it didn't make it any better. Okay, there we go. Author removes
We will still have them implemented inside of node.js. I mean, this function will be still implemented, but they're not accessible.
right.
If we define these markers, and we just simply say if def, and they'll disappear. Oh,
Yeah, like this is an opt-in to say like I just want to compile so that you can't use them at all and basically make a mistake that at runtime may fail, right?
Right. Or they choose like to check at runtime explicitly. It will be up to author. So they'll have effectively two different knobs to either do it at runtime check if they want to target different scenarios.
Right.
Because I was thinking about this memory cache. It may be useful in some scenarios and people have to deal with some third-party scripts, but there are also some scenarios and people deal with first-party scripts and they don't want to enable this memory cache. So it's
well, yeah, and really like in Node, we haven't turned on the memory cage. It's not something you can turn on dynamically either, right? So it comes down to like binaries either support it or they don't support it. So Electron made the choice, we're turning it on. You have no choice. Node still doesn't have it enabled. It's not impossible that it gets enabled at some point, but I don't think it's anytime soon or anything. And some other, I guess it is something like some other runtimes might have similar constraints due to security. You know, it's driven by security requirements in part and also optimization. So
there's some typo by add-on author, not. I mean, you misspelled author.
okay. I'm looking.
Line up, like first line.
Line up. Okay.
No, okay, number three,
Number three.
line towards the end.
This first line, second line.
Yes, add-on author.
Ah, right. Other.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know how that my fingers type that. Like anyway,
It's automatic, man.
on my phone, I usually blame the autocomplete, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's my brain and not the.
After misspelling the name of my manager twice, I disabled it.
Right. Yeah. I can see that. I haven't quite turned it off, but I have wondered if that would make sense. Any other thoughts, things like that we've missed in this?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, and we can see like, at least we can get direct feedback from Lavelle, like, is this actually a reasonable thing to solve his problem as a module author or not? So, okay, paste that. Okay, so I think yeah, it was a very useful discussion. So that's the one. Thanks for adding that for sure. So this one then. Okay, so I guess Kevin, you added this one too. I don't know if you have any, or did you?
This one was, I believe it was related to the PR about the finalizers in core.
Right,
Uh,
okay.
We want to run finalizers immediately. You're right. Like, yeah, we discussed last time. So I don't know. Like, my opinion, we just need to adopt these features, and we can
Right.
implement it in no time, like pretty much.
Okay, so this we discussed today in the meeting. The work on feature bits will help. And so waiting on that to move forward. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So we looked at that one. Let's look at this one. This one I think is related to the PR you have open. Is that right, Kevin?
Yes. So I think I jumped in right when you guys were discussing it.
Right. Yeah, let's flip over there. So
Yeah, because I'm a little confused, I think, with some of the comments that were mentioned.
Lucinda Cass, I think you thought you could help there, right?
Yeah, okay, so the question that I have, so async progress worker signal should not invalidate sent progress not handled. So is this an example by like not handled of if the developer performs a send progress and then a signal, we want both of those to be triggered?
I would like to mention Nance behavior. Since Nance async progress worker is based on UV async, which means the signal which corresponds to a simple UV async send, which doesn't send any data to the user's callback, and which just try to trigger the execution. I mean, probably send progress. The callbacks will be executed on the JavaScript thread, and that means if you have a unhandled send progress, then the signal just does nothing. And if you have there is nothing progress left to be handled, then the signals just triggers the user's callback with null point data. That's how Nance async progress worker currently working with the UV async send.
Okay, that makes sense. And then if you go to that link that you sent in the comment there, rather.
Sorry, okay, this one?
This one here. I thought this if data equals null point of return, I thought that was added as a fix for a different issue where multiple were being sent as something. Like if you go to the blame for this line.
Yep, just that.
Yeah, I can still recall this behavior. Is that the third function has a different behavior with the UV async send, because it just queues up the non-blocking code or blocking code, just non-blocking code. it queues up the request sent by the non-blocking calls. So here we just yeah. Yeah. The link I just posted in the comment is that it just sorry, I may need to rewording here. When the progress has been handled and the remaining non-blocking code request will be suppressed to not notify users callback since their request has already been handled. But by accidentally the signals method also sends the null pointer, and which means when there is no progress sent or progress saved here, the signals are suppressed too. So that invalidates the signal method, and we need to try to fix here is that to distinguish the signals to distinguish the signals method just to distinguish the signal and the queued up request of non-blocking calls by the send progress.
Okay. And how would we go about distinguishing that? Like, does Signal have to send something else other than null pointer then?
We can set a bit flag in the Signal method, and each time we are at the 59,998 at this line, we can flash. We can revert the bit so that each time we come to here, the signals are suppressed. And if the bit is set, we can just call users function, and if not set, we just flip the bit and just ignore the null pointer data.
Okay. So this would just be storing some sort of data on the progress worker class itself to say whether Signal was called, and then check that member inside that if null pointer condition.
Yeah,
Okay.
just to have to distinguish the signals between the queued up non-blocking code request.
I
Okay.
assume this send progress underscore is like a public method.
I don't think it was. No.
I'm just like, if it's not public, could we extend it so that it like would have something that says, is this a signal or not? Is that another option to putting some like state data?
But that send progress ends up calling the thread safe function, which requires I mean, maybe I think I can take a look into that.
I'm just thinking like other ways of getting the data you need in is like, is it possible to change that signature so it's as simple as like signal equals false is the default, and where you call it from Signal you can say equals true. But if that affects the external API, not so good. But
yeah,
I can check it.
It is a private method.
Yeah, it's a private method.
I'm not exactly sure how we would be able to pass that data from the method call into the asynchronous on progress that gets called, where we're checking that.
I see. So it's not in the sync. It's, you don't need to check in the send progress method, but somewhere inside.
Yeah, basically in that line where he linked on 5998, where it was returning if null pointer return. And then that's sort of like an asynchronous
Right, okay.
section.
Yeah, so in that case, maybe it does make more sense to just before you do the send progress, you set that. As long as
Okay.
there's no way that, I guess, like, could you get confused by having set that and then some other progress comes in before you've handled the signal and
When
Oh.
there is a data set in the progress worker, you can just ignore the signal flag, and by any means, when you call the user's message, the signal bit have to flick back to no signal, so that the signal will only be called once. Yeah, it just here, and this signal method can do the similar thing here.
the other question would be, could we bundle it into this data? Yes.
That will be, I believe it's all possible, but I believe the most simplest way is to add a new member.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as like the only thing I was worrying a little bit about is like, can we get a send progress where it's not a signal and one at a signal somehow at the same time? And like by having set one set of state, would that end up doing the wrong thing? But if not, then it all sounds good.
We have a new text here, so we want to set the data and the signal at the simultaneously.
Right. Okay.
Okay, I think that makes sense. I can try working on this then. Thank you.
Right. I guess it would be that if if there was a subsequent send progress after the signal, we would unset that bit.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
The lock. Okay, I think I got that. All makes sense. Okay, thanks.
And I'd be happy if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think that's that one. Right, this one. Right, so it sounds like Lucian-Cas, you had a chance to take a look, right? Chenzong, you had a chance to take a look at this one.
Yeah, I believe this exactly the problem we have fixed in the PR, but that for the add-on authors, we need a runtime or build time flags for them to just to switch to the expected behavior with the, like say, feature bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
so like the other one, we're waiting on making progress on those feature flags, and then we can look at doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds good. This one, I think maybe we can close it because your Kevin's PR landed.
Sure.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Or wait a second, it is closed. I think it's more just we can remove it from here. Right, so I'm going to delete that. It's no longer an issue, which is great.
Yes, so I haven't had any work on this. Just a little bit of recap. What's happening is that the developer wants to store a thread safe function on a object wrap instance, and in the destructor of this instance, call release on the thread safe function. And if we look at the original post, the top comment, we see in the call, that's sort of like the example of the object wrap, blah, blah, blah. If we look at the stack trace that he posted a little lower, we see that there's a call to this free environment, and then the finalize of the object wrap, which deletes the object, and then they try to do a release, and then that is crashing the process. So what we were thinking was that it maybe the call to free environment is releasing the thread safe functions first. So like maybe there's some sort of dependency or whatever going on with the order of how these things are being freed. And then that's, I think, as far as we got, was sort of just discussing that as being a possibility. Does this sound plausible as a thing that could be happening?
Yeah, it's what is it actually?
Because they're using Electron, of course, more Electron issues, where they're reloading the environment. So one of the examples could be like hot swapping or something like that, like when they're doing active development and they make changes and then they just restart the environment. This is one of the issues that they are having when Electron is reloading.
Yeah, okay. So basically running this under node works just fine, right? What they say?
Yes.
What might be interesting is to run it under Valgrind just to see if there's like, it happens to run fine, but there's actually some errors going on, because that would be an easier case to debug maybe. Because certainly, like, you know, there may, like, it looks like you're destroying the environment, so certainly it
Again,
almost
this is
seems like
like
something's been destroyed that you depend on, right? It doesn't, unfortunately, the call stack doesn't quite tell us what is it that it tried to use that caused it to blow up, right?
right. All we know is that, so I guess he's saying that he uses get current web contents, reload, ignoring cache, some JavaScript call. It's listed right below his C++ code paste or whatever, but it is doing some sort of reloading of the environment, which I guess the reload is ending up freeing, and then it just blows up. And I'm not sure if there's if there's a specific order that's being done where the thread safes are being released first and then the objects are being released, or if that's, because that's really the only thing that I can think of as to why release would fail, is if it's
that's where
ready to-
Valgrind would probably tell us that, because it would say you're using this memory that was released over here. Where it's very useful. Like it basically looks at the freeze, and that's where it's like, it'll, instead of just crashing, it says, wait a sec, you're reading or writing for something that was freed, and then it tells you where it was freed. And we could ask if they could run with Valgrind, or even that's why I was just wondering, like taking this simple thing and running it with Valgrind, like under node with Valgrind, it's possible that like we would get an error even though it doesn't crash, right? Because the crashes depend on whether you've overwritten that memory or whatever. And
Right.
just sort of
Okay.
thinking on how to get down to, like, I think your theory is, the theory of something's been freed earlier, that might be a way to find out more specifically what's going on.
Okay. Should we ask them to try to run in Valgrind, or should we try to do that ourselves?
I wonder if like we can, why don't we ask, right? Never hurts to say. If they're still around, I guess, is the, have they commented or discussed?
There's been a couple of people that have had this issue, so.
Okay. Let me find that. Place. It's memory. Right, here we go. Okay, so we'll do that. And if they do that, that's great. It'll help move things forward. If not, and if somebody has some cycles to look at it, that's one probably thing to do to try and move it forward.
All right.
Okay. That was this one, was it? Right.
Yeah, no progress there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So that got us through that list. Okay, so now we're basically down to, well, actually, let's move some of these up because so we already talked about this one in the stales. I tagged it because I figured it would be good to have it show up, but we already covered it. This one, I think we've just discussed in terms of like, hey, some good ways to help people with this. But I don't know that there's anything new to discuss on that one this week. Okay, if not, we can move over to and we can look at what's new here. Anyone's top of people's mind that they want to raise?
Nick has been working on the first two.
Okay.
Emit wrapped instance from, I had looked at that and everything, the third issue.
Okay, this one.
I had looked at that and everything looks okay. If we want to open that up real
Sure.
quick. So what they're doing is trying to pass the created instance to another function via thread safe function. And the weird thing that's happening in this second code block, where there's this method on instance created, this one here, there's some commented code where is constructor call, it's returning true, and the new target is returning a number, and that's what he's getting in his JavaScript side. So that final code block where he has his callback handler and is trying to log the instance, it's returning that number. Everything looked okay to me. So the only thing I can, like, if somebody else wants to take a look, that'd be great too. But I was thinking of trying to make just an example and see if I can create something that mimics what he's trying to do. Because everything looks fine.
Is it reasonable to ask for like a small repo, kind of reproduction repo?
I mean, yeah, I guess that doesn't hurt to ask. Maybe we can throw that in before I try creating some sort of example.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you missed a couple words.
We discussed
Provide
in the meeting
minimal.
today.
Oh, minimal reproduction to recreate the issue. Yeah. Reproduction.
Minimal, provide sample code to recreate.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. And you said like this first one has already been talking, right? Okay.
Yeah, Nick's working
Yep.
on that one as well as I think not the third one.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we just talked about that.
Yeah.
One, right.
That one I think I messaged. Yeah, somebody was trying to use execute and calling JavaScript in the async worker execute, which is not supposed to run JavaScript code.
Right. Okay.
Waiting back from him on that. I guess Nick is working on the fourth one, this fastest way to create huge object.
Right.
So yeah, that was just posted today, so we can wait to see what the poster says regarding that. And I think that's all of the new issues then.
Okay. And I think we already talked about these 3 pull requests. So flip over to Node. Issues. Node API. Gonna remove this.
That's not the label filter. Yeah, I think you need to add label.
Yeah, I was just trying to find the label. Usually it pops up, but it's not for me today. So label, what is the label?
Yeah, it's correct label, just prefix
Yeah.
label.
Like that?
Mhm.
There we go. Okay. Yep. Okay, so we can see, okay, nothing new since the 22nd. I don't know if there's any that people want to call out.
Nothing.
Yeah, not the issue, but I do want to get your attention with NAPRF and all this feature stuff. I still want you review the code. Pretty much,
Right, which
from my
one?
perspective, already, I really want looking for someone to review it.
This one?
Yes.
Right.
And I don't know what this sporadic failure of this like ASUN. It's like 50-50. It works a lot. Works.
Yeah, that does tend to be flaky sometimes. So okay,
Yeah.
so this one is basically it's like, please anybody go and give us a review, right?
Right. Like,
Yep.
I may need to do some documentation, more documentation. I realized maybe I need to do this in API ref changes documentation or something. But I do have documentation already written. I just need someone to look through. So thankfully, just to give you kind of a quick overview about those feature stuff. So thankfully, the way what we do, like instead of then we register modules, we have right now 4 reserved different pointers. So I'm reusing one of them right now to pass pointer to the feature bit set. Why it's pointer to feature bit set. So if we ever exceed 32 bits, we can potentially start to pass array of bits, array of 32 numbers with bits. So we can extend it in future if we ever need to. And okay, so it's just bits, and also we allow people what I propose for each version, we're going to have some predefined set of bits, which features enabled for each version. And then in user code, it should be possible for us to say or kind of modify it with bit set. If you look inside of this test reference.c, it's no
This one?
a bit no, above
This one.
This
Okay.
one.
Yep.
If you look on this one, you see this is where kind of I want the whole test to test against old behavior. So, for example, here I'm removing this bit. So technically, the whole test works against old code. So if add-on author wants to modify a bit set, they can simply do it like this in their code.
Right. Okay.
And actually, this one plus look on the zip file. There is one more thing they need to say inside of zip files. They need to put additional define by saying that I do want to provide custom features. So effectively, they need to do both things: provide this macro definition, and then they can redefine this variable.
In terms of this defines custom, this is to like opt into using the methods. Is that the?
It's in order to opt in to specify a custom set of features. So by default, during node registration, we'll use default set of features. But in order to use custom set of features, pretty much by setting this.
I see. Okay. So it's not like a method call that you say, I'm going to use these features. It's part of the define that you.
Right, you effectively are defining global variable, because during module registration, we're grabbing pointer to this global variable in Python 10.
Okay. Okay, as opposed to actually making them have to do a call to turn them on. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Yeah.
And then there is additional method which during runtime you can check which features are enabled or not.
Right, I was looking for like, where's the method to actually enable the feature?
Right.
But there isn't one, right? There's a define that you set instead. Okay.
Right.
And that works better than a runtime, I guess, because it can't really be a runtime thing, right? Like you can't enable them at runtime. Well, should it be something where you could set them at runtime?
At one of my iterations, I had such problem. It was done, but I decided against it because some features really be safe to be defined during module registration upfront, because then we're creating. It's actually we define it before we create an environment, because maybe creation of environment itself may kind of be affected by it a lot. Like imagine we put in something in some penalizer queue or something like this.
Right. Yeah.
We need to know all these different flags before we even start doing it.
And I guess it makes it clear you can't turn them, like you can't change them, right? Whereas if there's a method that says set, maybe so it does seem like a nice, more constrained, which is probably good. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we ever need to do stuff loose, we can edit later. But at this point, I want to start and thing to be robust as possible.
Yeah. No, got it. Yeah. Make it as little as easy to implement and as constrained. Yeah.
Cheng-Zhong, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with this static way to define the feature bit.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if you look at node.api.h, it's kind of where with the whole machinery, how we pass in node.api.h. Choose it. Sorry, node.api.h.
Right here. Yeah.
So it's very simple. So yeah.
And we can, like, in terms of the features, we can still use the Node API version to constrain. And I guess that's at compile time too, which is kind of the same. The registration kind of fits with that being, so that makes okay.
Right. So I see here, like if you define this macro, we do define this external NAPI feature module
Right.
variable.
Yep.
And then we pretty much using. So pretty much with the whole this machinery, how we pass it during registration is defined here. But I understand we have, correct me if I'm wrong, but currently we have multiple ways to register modules, right? And this is just one of them, right?
There's multiple macros, right? There is probably in there like another nappy something else. Like this
Let's
nappy
look
module, we call it nappy module X though, so.
Right. So I think this approach would probably just affect some of the ways we register modules, not all of them.
Right.
And I actually have a question. I came to realizations while working on these features. We have very weird way how we register modules inside of Node. So we actually rely on some logic which CRT does during DLL loading. So technically, the way we do it today, we kind of experiment during DLL load time. We executing some code. This code calls something back from node.js and does a lot of interesting things. Whereas, like I think in the past, it was totally different way to do it. It effectively then DLL is loaded. It will be up to node.js to call some specific function to do all this initialization. So more like lazy way, if you like. I was wondering, like, why we chose to go to this more invasive, I would say, way to initialize.
I think we'd have to go back to the like the PRs where that was changed to like and is this, I'm just wondering if this is something we inherited just from add-ons as general, or was something we did specifically for Node add-on add-ons or not.
Because I think like having this more static approach would be a little bit more beneficial, especially if you do something like, say, you want to implement your module inside of C# or .NET. So I was playing a little bit with NAPI CS, and they do use their old method to do it. So instead of like, imagine if your module is not written in C or C++, they may actually miss this logic to do some this magical C-specific handshake. Instead, they would effectively prepare some maybe data, whatever, like module definition, and pass it to function.
Yeah, I seem to remember, like, I don't remember well enough, but my sort of recollection is something was changed because we thought, and it may have been like not just for Node add-on, but like there was some path for missing that initialization. So something was changed to try and improve that, as opposed to make it worse.
So I can do research when it happened, but I just...
Yeah, that probably makes sense to find those PRs and see when and all that.
But if we can find a way to go like different approach, would be we resistant to do it? I'm just curious.
I think it's like, does it affect any existing add-ons, right?
Yeah, definitely kind of without affecting existing, like with backward compatibility and stuff. But
Right.
I think like it will potentially improve implementation for different language, non-C languages. Like for example, these features, I don't see them how they can be done inside of kind of an API CS. They seem to be, the whole kind of stuff right now is more like C specific.
Right, so that might be an argument, like if we did actually have a method that said set the features, you could do it, right?
No, like it's I still want to do it during registration, but imagine if you have a registration method, and this registration method needs to be implemented in your language. Say you implement it in C#,
Right.
and node.js loads with DLL and then calls to this method, and this method returns back some kind of initialized struct with all these different parameters. And for example, if we're talking about all these different feature bits, they will receive it. So effectively, it will be more like a pull behavior, like a node.js. Instead of push on me what your module has, instead of it will say like, okay, give it to me.
Yeah, I think if you can, as long as we're not breaking anything, if we're gonna improve a situation where, like, if there's a gap and we can improve that, then I don't see why anybody would be opposed to that. Which I
Okay.
think is your question, right? But we probably need a little more context of what's there and all that.
Okay. I'll try to kind of think about it a little
Okay.
bit on next meeting.
Sounds good. Any others we should chat about before we close out for today? If not, we are past time. So thanks for everybody's time and the good discussion, and we will see everybody next time.
Thank you.
See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.